Welcome back to New Persuasive Words. I'm Scott Jones.
And I'm Bill Bohr.
And Bill, it is Liberation Day, baby. Are you liberated, Bill? How do you feel?
Well, I'm a little uncomfortable with the Trump administration's Marxist theology. I'm a little uncomfortable with their liberation theology. I mean, I tried to not be turned off by the red communist hats and the police state. I thought, well, you got to break a few eggs, as you always say, to make an omelet. The squelching of legal dissent, I thought, well, okay, that's part of the revolution. It has to happen. But Liberation Day, they may be taking this neo-Marxism a little too far for me.
Bill, I have not felt this liberated since I switched to boxer briefs, and this is really a big day. Can't you see Trump? He speaks in the Rose Garden.
More than all we wanted to know about your underwear choice. You and Bill Clinton.
What is he going to say? I haven't felt this liberated since the Supreme Court gave me a get out of jail free. That's very liberating when they tell you, it's so great because you get up in the morning and you just think, I can do whatever I want. It's better than being at Mar-a-Lago in May, okay?
Well, I see they're going to cut down Andrew Jackson's magnolia tree, probably dig up Jackie Onassis's or Jackie Kennedy's rose garden. Put more concrete. We need that. I think
I'm sympathetic to that, actually, quite frankly. I think that, look, the Rose Garden, people said, when they do these press conferences, you sit there, it can get muddy. It's not, he's thinking,
let's pave it over. That's good. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like Houston.
Yeah. It seems to be his approach to the national parks. So
and the national debt. You just pave it over, okay? Yeah. You just pave. Oh, you know what, Bill? I see why I don't like this. You know what? Something was different, and you know what it is. I know what it is. Look at this. It's the camera. Okay, watch this, Bill. Here I go. Different camera angle.
That's worse, actually. There we go. That's
good.
That's
good.
That's good.
It's very strange. I was like, I look a little different here. All right.
Yeah, you got your makeup people came in and did you over.
The makeup came in.
I need some makeup. I tell you, I've got this cold. I'm not sleeping well at night, so my already aged face looks worse. So, at any rate,
well, I think it'll be so fantastic. You're going to be so liberated. You're going to feel better. You're going to feel more liberated than Caitlyn Jenner is going to feel when I ban all trans bathrooms. Okay? Very liberating. Goodness. It's fantastic. You know what's the best thing? When they in the Saturday Night Live sketch, I love the guy that plays Trump because he's so much better than Baldwin or any of these people. He does good. The diction, the little. I'm trying to learn from him, right? When he does the little.
He's good.
We love that. Like he trails off. I don't do the trail off while I'm working on my trail off.
He does that well, yeah.
Because that is part of it's these little verbal tics that Trump does. That's the key to really doing a good Trump. But when they spoofed the Zelensky thing, they're like, "Thank you, Mr. President, for dressing as casual Star Trek." And we love Star Trek because in Star Trek there was no DEI. Okay, the white guy was boss over everybody. He gave orders to Spock, who I think was Guatemalan, and we love that.
Yeah, he's funny. Yeah.
Well, Bill, before we get into today's topic, I thought I would share for our Republican listeners and friends, who we have many of them have a lot of feelings about you, which I'll just leave that. They love they look. We've got fans in the UCC and in New England. We've got fans all over.
There we are. Yeah, our podcast was quoted today at a meeting. So
hey, look at that.
Right, look at that. Yeah,
it wasn't a meeting of the Socialist Party of America, was it?
No, it was not. I think it was ICE agents getting together. This is putting us on their list. Yeah.
I love the ICE agents. They're so fantastic. So this is from St. Reagan. And he's talking a little bit about the 1776 and the nature of the revolution. And it's just maybe he's talking about Well, he started in the 1770s. And he says, at that same year, a Scottish economist named Adam Smith launched another revolution with a book entitled The Wealth of Nations, which exposed for all time the folly of protectionism. Over the past 200 years, not only has the argument against tariffs and trade barriers won nearly universal agreement among economists, but it has also proven itself in the real world, where we have seen free trading nations prosper while protectionist countries fall behind. America's most recent experiment with protectionism was a disaster for the working men and women of this country. When Congress passed the Smoot-Hawley tariff in 1930, we were told that it would protect America from foreign competition and save jobs in this country. The same line we hear today.
Right.
The actual result was the Great Depression, the worst economic catastrophe in our history. 1 out of 4 Americans were thrown out of work. 2 years later, when I cast my first ballot for president, I voted for Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who opposed protectionism and called for the repeal of that disastrous tariff.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the Great Depression had already started, but it made it worse, right? Yeah, because of the you had a lot of bad things coming together, which we may be working on right now, right? You had horrific.
The good news is, when the tariffs create more depression, the prices. I mean, Bobby Kennedy's going to take care of the pharmaceuticals, so we're going to have We're going to have no soda. Okay, we're going to have wonderful fun. We're going to have the best pharmaceuticals.
You're upset about their war on soda. You like soda.
I like soda. I do. I Coke Zero. I drink a lot of Coke Zero.
Well, I think, you had the stock market crash. You had the tariffs. You had the drought because of over farming, and then the horrific climate that happened. So, so we got a couple of those things going on right now. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Yeah, I think it's again, I'm not an economist, and I will say here for the record, my worst grade in college, the only C I got in college was in economics. So I'm not claiming to be an expert. It does seem on both sides of the aisle, and also the history of this, that and also at the heart of capitalism, right? Everybody's kind of against this. And I don't, you one time at a previous podcast said you think this is maybe one thing he actually believes in.
I do.
Yeah. And what's interesting to me, I love the people that say, well, he's a businessman. Trust him. Well, again, if you look at the history of his businesses, I mean, how he's really what made him a billionaire was the way he's cashed in off of the presidency. He wasn't a billionaire before he became president. And so, I mean, it's hard. I know with real estate, it's very difficult.
He did fire Gary Busey, though.
Yeah, well, okay. But I'm just saying that it's the irony of it is how much tax breaks, how much really basically government subsidies helped build the Trump empire. Elon Musk has made all his money, his real money, on he's bought companies. He hasn't really started anything. And then government contracts and government subsidies. So that, I mean, the irony of these guys doing this is that they actually, again, where do you start pointing out the hypocrisy? But I just, prices going up is not good for anyone, particularly the working people, the working class folks. Yeah. The other thing I do think is interesting. I mean, I do think there has to be, I do think we're an over-medicated society.
Prices going up are very good for the people that put the price stickers on things, right? Like at the grocery store, like more stickers, okay? Even though the stickers are made in China. We love that.
Like the guy who climbs up and down the ladder at the gas station. They don't do that anymore. Remember that? I remember that back turn.
Hey, look, if he falls, he needs Obamacare, which we're going to get rid of. We have a great plan, though. We have the workings of a plan. We love that.
The workings of the plan. Yeah. So anyway, I don't, at what point, I mean.
Do you think Trump will fix the tariffs thing if it does create a depression? Do you think he'll fix that in the third term?
Well, third term.
Uncle Steve said that. Steve Bannon. Uncle Steve said the brain trust of the outfit said that that's a possibility. And Trump said to Kristen Walker that we're looking at like possible. But you know what that is, though? Two things.
The shiny object over here, everybody.
It's the troll. Well, it's three things. That's you. Yeah. First, it's a shiny object, right? It's the distraction. It's the muzzle velocity. Just keep everybody so overwhelmed you don't know what to do. Second, it's just the trolling of America and the world too.
Right.
Trump is just the troll in chief. Right? He loves trolling people. I mean, that's just his default mode of moving around and interacting in the world. Yeah. And the third thing is it's the loyalty test stuff. It's the Stalinism, right? It's the I'm going to put this. Now let's see. I'm counting names. I'm looking at heads. Who's defending it? Look, who's loyal enough to say we can do it? Okay, Trump. We love them. Like that's it.
That lackey congressman from Tennessee probably the next day had a bill.
Yeah. No, who was the guy? I forget his name. He was on Meet the Press. He was defending the Signal chat. It was a beautiful. He even said it was a beautiful chat, a beautiful attack. Like no, but this is the State of the Union stuff. The excessive falsehoods at the State of the Union, right? But this is it. Who's standing? Who's applauding? Right? It's the loyalty test. You get out there and you float this out there on a serious journalistic outlet. Because you want to watch, because you watch this cable news all day. You want to watch and see what sycophants will get on and defend this stuff.
Well, I think, like the Elon Musk leak, right? That the leak that happened today that Trump told the inner circle that Elon Musk, he's not going to be around much longer in the cabinet. The brilliant thing about Elon Musk is they're not throwing firebombs at any of the Trump properties. They're attacking Teslas. So, I mean, again, it's the great, it's the Romans perfected us, right? Get the who the first in the Jewish revolt, who were the first people to go? It was the collaborators, right? It was the tax collectors. So Elon is serving multiple functions, I think, in the Trump world.
See, if Trump were president during Jesus' time, the tax collectors would have been following Jesus because they would have had no jobs.
Yeah,
they'd have had the time. Zacchaeus would have had more time on his hands.
Could you imagine? Now, maybe we can do this for our Holy Week. But Trump is Pontius Pilate. Trump justifying the crucifixion of Jesus. It wouldn't have to take too much. It'd be like them. Yes, we're sorry that we got the wrong guy. We sent him to El Salvador.
First, it'd be like, I don't even know who Jesus is. I've never met him. I've never heard of Jesus. Second of all, I think he's a Palestinian. Okay, right. Like Schumer. Okay, he's a Palestinian like Chuck Schumer.
Yeah, no, that would be. Yeah, it'd be funnier if it wasn't like true, because in reality, every day they're finding new ways to crucify Jesus, at least from the Matthew 25 perspective. So, anyway, but
that's a great book title. New Ways to Crucify Jesus. Now that's a book title.
Forward by Stephen Miller.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, Bill, there we go. Liberation Day.
Liberation Theology Day. Again, I'm a little nervous. I'm a little nervous about this the influence of Latin American theology on the Trump administration.
Wouldn't that be great if we had like a I guess AI could probably make this or something. We could, like a Che Guevara poster with Trump.
Yeah.
The Trump Guevara.
Yeah, Trump Guevara here. Yeah.
Well, Bill, we're 14 minutes in. We haven't mentioned Zion, the New Jerusalem. Right. Carmel, Indiana. I don't have any news. We do have a correspondent, though.
Well, we do have a correspondent. We're excited about this. We have to get this scheduled, but we have a correspondent who actually he's at Butler College. He's my nephew, who's very excited to do this. He's already doing research on the cake shop. But one thing I will point out, so we did say this earlier, that the NCAA selection committee met at Carmel, right?
They did.
I think this is the first time since 2008 that all of the 1 seeds are the Final Four. So, or I said that awkwardly, but the Final Four is made up of all one seeds. So, which meant that just being in Carmel allowed them to have the vision and the insight, and maybe even um, the inspired ability to see that they picked the four best teams to be in the Final Four. So, and I think two or three.
It's the cake and the no roundabouts, or the roundabouts rather. Yeah, it's the cake and the roundabout. No traffic. It's the
kudos to the Carmel Selection Committee. There we go.
Carmel, Indiana, baby.
Carmel, Indiana, right.
We love Carmel. We love it. You know what? It's from the land of Mike Pence. And you know what? There's no gays born in, no trans. Oh, gosh. All right, Bill. So let's talk something. A Robert Jensen quote that came to us through the Lutheran Forum. I love the sound of it.
Yeah. And again, one of our favorite theologians of blessed memory now.
Robert Jensen. Book called Story and Promise is where this quote comes from, written in 1973, a book that holds up remarkably well. I found a copy online today of the 89 version forward, where he talks about, this is 15 years later or whatever, and he talked about in the preface the reception of the book by Peter Brunner, his doctor father, his advisor, and it was interesting. He said that his advisor was critically ill, like deathly ill at the end of his life, and still wrote like 4 single-spaced pages in response. And he said that one of the things he critiqued, he said, is doesn't take sin and death seriously enough, and that he thinks that here he sees in his student Bart winning over Luther, and it's pretty interesting. Yeah, it's a great quote. I mean, it was great. The quotations, and then Jensen's analysis of what his mindset from the 60s and the early 70s was great stuff. Yeah. But I'll give you the quote here, Bill. Here we go. It seems quite possible that the American dream is, within the framework of America itself, finished. Perhaps a preacher or poet can soon be elected president, or perhaps something else will break the continuities. Otherwise, the American version of pragmatic liberalism seems likely to play its comedy to the final revelation of the nihilism that has always been its heart and has achieved incarnation in Richard Nixon. In that, we take the market's rewards as our judgment of human worth. Our final moral maxim must be, it doesn't matter where you are going, so long as you run hard to get there. Or, in its religious version, it doesn't matter what you believe, so long as you are sincere. That is, there is no common truth. Political nihilism is called fascism. It seems unlikely that America will experience the metaphysical spasm of a European-style fascist government. But the dread possibility is that our unmetaphysical nation may reach the other side of fascism without having to go through the spasm. We may now be achieving the self-sustaining chaos, which was fascism's distant goal. A police state in which proper dissent can be tolerated because it makes no difference. A military state in which civilian control remains because the civilians are militarized. A racist state in which oppressed minorities are allowed to fight a permanent losing war for their rights. Robert Jensen, everybody. Story and Promise.
No, and that, again, that was written 50 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think he's right on. I mean, again, fascism by nature, it's one of the things that's interesting by, whether we call, we talk about Nazism or Mussolini or whatever. The thing about it is, by nature, fascism is homegrown. So each culture is going to have its own kind of version of fascism, right? And
is it cage free?
I don't know. You wouldn't expect. You would not. Yeah.
No,
right.
actually,
Well,
usually it's not. Usually,
right. No, we don't.
Generally,
No.
there are cages.
There are cages.
And trains. And
trains. Right.
trains.
And
that's why they're not going to have fascism in California, because they can't build trains.
Pictures.
There's no light rail. No high speed rail.
Photo ops, and our national security advisor with a photo op in front of a concentration camp in El Salvador as a good thing. Yeah, yeah. But she got her makeup right.
Well,
yeah, but no, I think there's a sense of American fascism.
Wait, that's Tulsi.
Tulsi. I gave her the wrong
She's
position.
DNI.
DNI, right. But
not to be confused with DEI. Okay.
Right. But no, I think America's not a very metaphysical place anyway. Never has been. So it would make sense that our fascism wouldn't have that. And I think, I think it could be a news report, right? He could be, It could be a description, certainly, of the Republican Party's acquiescence to Trumpism. But the other thing too is the Democrats holding up goofy signs, at the State of the Union. I mean, I saw a poll yesterday. Again, I'm not into polls, but that the Democrats rating, their favorability is as low as Trump's. So, or maybe
and the CBS poll Sunday had Trump at 50%.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a sense where people are okay with this. They're okay with rewriting history. They're okay with the brutality that's going on. They're okay. Middle America is quite happy to see Harvard and Princeton and Columbia lose grants. Now, they're not going to be as happy when their neighbor or grandmother loses Medicaid or Medicare, or when they try to get things filed at the Social Security office and things like that. They're not going to be happy when they go to Kmart or Walmart. If after the Great Liberation
speech, who goes to Kmart? First off, if you get a Kmart, when was the last time you saw a Kmart?
Oh gosh, there was one in Central Jersey where we lived. Yeah, somewhere there.
It's in a Kmart.
Yeah. But regardless, dollar stores. I'm surrounded by dollar stores.
Yeah.
So yeah, and the other thing too, for instance, like I'm in a rural, Vermont, is essentially, it's a rural state. I mean, and it's hard to find medical care as it is, and boy, the funding in a little state like this, when it loses federal funding for things like, medical centers and dentists and things like that. I think of all the kind of country places I've lived and worked. That's going to be, it's going to be real pain there. So, I mean, but I don't know, again, I don't know if that 50% is going to change. That's the thing about it. I mean, I think, you talked about the loyalty test. I think that there would be his base would be happy to have him be president for life.
Yeah, well, yeah,
by the way, which ceases to be a president, but that's neither here nor there, right?
So there's this something in this Jensen quote that it's troubling. I'm trying to think if I agree with it or not, but I'm going back and forth in my head. Otherwise, the American version of pragmatic liberalism seems likely to play its comedy to the final revelation of the nihilism that has always been its heart. Now, thinking of that,
that's
dark.
Yeah, that's dark. Yeah,
I mean that's dark. But then I was thinking about, so whether or not, so that makes me think, is John Adams, is Alexander Hamilton. I mean, is it right?
Is it
yeah? I mean, is it right?
Yeah.
Is it right to see the 18th century framers and founders, the revolutionaries, and the framers of the Constitution, as pragmatic liberals that had a nihilism at the heart of what they were doing? Even, I mean, I think you'd have to say, if that's the case, that maybe some of them were, well, I was going to say were deluded about it. I was going to say Jefferson was, according to a recent biography I read, self-deluded about many, many things. But but here though, I was listening to Jon Stewart's recent conversation with Ezra Klein, which was fantastic. But Ezra Klein said something about governments should be about, basically the evaluation of government should be its ends, not its processes. Right? No,
right.
There's its accomplishments. It's now there's something about this that is right. Okay. But then there's something that goes back to this Woodrow Wilson quote that I read a couple weeks ago, that in this Fukuyama book I've been reading, and where Wilson is like, hey, the problem is that the Western Anglo tradition has been concerned basically about checks and balances of government and about restraint and not functionality of government, right? And so this sort of desire for the pragmatism, for this constant make government more efficient, when on some level the framers wanted some inefficiency built into the system, right? They thought that centralized authority that was too efficient was despotic, right? I mean it's just a shade, it's despotism is always at the door, right? So I wonder that pragmatic liberalism, when I think we talked a couple weeks ago about political orders, and you had the New Deal political order, and the thing about a political order is it encompasses its opponents, right? So Eisenhower, he doesn't come in and undo it. He just continues the spending and continues the growth. Neoliberalism, the next order. Clinton, you talk about Doge. Clinton got rid of a lot of government workers. Clinton did a lot of efficiency of government. I mean, he was living under the shadow and in the political wake of Ronald Reagan, right? That was the order. Neoliberalism was the order. Is the next order, or is this pragmatism? Will that be the new order? And is the shadow side this indifference to the constitutional norms?
Well, I think we've had a indifferent electorate. You look at the percentages of people who vote, my entire lifetime, right? So there's some of that indifference. Who are the pragmatic liberals? Name names. Who did he have in mind?
I mean, Ezra Klein is one.
No, I'm talking about Jensen.
Oh, Jensen.
Yeah, 1970s. So who's the FDR, LBJ, Riverside Drive Church?
Yeah, I mean, maybe.
Niebuhr,
I mean,
Reinhold Niebuhr.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's it. See, that's a good question, because that term pragmatic liberalism, right? So, are you talking about?
I'm just wondering who he's talking.
The left of center. Is he talking about the left of center in the States, or is he talking about? Well, seemingly he can't be talking about his contemporaries, because he said that this is at the heart of the American project, right? This pragmatic liberalism. So this isn't something that's even 20th century, I don't think. I mean, I think he's saying that this pragmatic liberalism goes back to the beginning of the experiment. I think. I couldn't track down. I didn't have enough time to track down the context of the quote.
Well, we think of maybe like Second Great Awakening stuff. The New Light folks. I mean, there's a kind of one of the things that you look at. Holland just made this point in the chapter on enlightenment in his book Dominion, that there was this kind of merging of evangelicalism, kind of evangelical in the sense of Wesley and that Second Great Awakening evangelical spirit, and the Enlightenment. And so what you get is those two forces together is what helps overthrow slavery, right? Because it was old school Presbyterians in the South who were arguing to keep slavery. It wasn't, it was a lot of the abolitionist movement, a lot of the civil rights or social change movements of the 19th century grew out of that Second Great Awakening evangelicalism. The sons and daughters of Wesley, Charles Finney, those folks. There was a kind of there was a marriage there of evangelical piety, of kind of a holiness, social transformation stuff, with what I would say Enlightenment presuppositions, right? Because they certainly weren't rooted in any kind of historical Christianity. It was very experiential, and I don't know. It's an interesting thing to think about because in some levels that would be it would be an indictment against the good things, the things that we often look at as virtues in our past. Why did our American Revolution not turn into, well, you could say we didn't have the French Revolution, we didn't have the guillotine, but we had a civil war, which killed maybe as many as same kind of percentage. I don't know, but it's an interesting to me. It's interesting to think about where he roots this kind of idea. It makes sense to me. I'm still not totally sure I'm with you that I totally understand it though. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, that's, I found an internet copy of in the Internet Archive. So, but I couldn't search it. So I couldn't,
right.
Because I would like to see the wider context of the quote. It's a book I love. I just don't remember that. I don't quite remember that quote, but yeah, I mean, this is, I found one other quote about nihilism from Cornell West. And I think this is from Race Matters. He said the proper starting point for the crucial debate about the prospects for Black America is an examination of the nihilism that increasingly pervades Black communities. Nihilism is to be understood here not as a philosophic doctrine that there are no rational grounds for legitimate standards or authority. It is far more the lived experience of coping with a life of horrifying meaninglessness, hopelessness, and, most important, lovelessness. The frightening result is a numbing detachment from others and a self-destructive disposition toward the world. Life without meaning, hope, and love breeds a cold-hearted, mean-spirited outlook that destroys both the individual and others.
Yeah. And what gets glorified, the rap culture, right? What gets glorified.
Yeah. Right. I mean, this is
yeah.
Elsewhere in that book,
and gets appropriated. It gets appropriated. Is appropriated now by white conservatives. Listen to contemporary country music.
Right.
Yeah. It's just yeah.
I mean, this is elsewhere in that book in Race Matters. He talks about nihilism as the preeminent American social problem, and he says that book I think was written in the 90s, but he talks about in L.A. He's just looking at L.A. You have these gang shootings in East L.A. and these multimillionaires kids that are just spaced out, zoned out, and drug addicted, and he's like, this is the same. This is the nihilism within miles of each other, played out very differently with different resources and cultural locations, but in such tight geographic. Yeah, in such a tight geographic region. Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, this is, Bill. This is. I'm not a nihilist.
No, neither am I.
But things don't. Yeah, I mean, the Jensen quote is arresting because it's sort of it and this idea that you slip coldly into the, you slip quietly into the night. That whole thing about it's, you can tolerate the proper dissent because it just doesn't make a difference anymore, right? You let the oppressed classes keep fighting because it doesn't matter; they can't win anyway. No. I mean, that stuff is so dark, and yet it doesn't. I mean, it's prophetic. I mean, it's interesting that was written 50 years ago.
Well, what is prophetic in 1973 feels descriptive in 2025.
Yeah. And in the 70s, a young, wild-eyed, bearded guy was planting a church out in Moscow, Idaho. Just years after this.
Well, he's the poster child of this, actually.
He wouldn't.
Oh no, I mean, yeah, absolutely no. I mean, when you theologically justify slavery, and then you laugh about that you did it.
He would say that Wilson would see himself. I think he would see his entire project as the resistance to what Jensen's talking about. I think I was going to say, I almost uh, I almost was going to say, I almost was going to cast Wilson in these sort of Benedict option terms.
Right. Yeah.
But he doesn't view himself that way, right?
No.
He's a postmillennialist. He thinks, although he said something the other day. I was listening. I shouldn't say how much I listen to this guy, but I was listening to something.
You just did.
I talked about my underwear. This is really an expose.
Yeah. Yeah.
This puts the X in expose.
Right.
But yeah, he said something about, he called the Trump administration a port in the storm.
Right. Yeah.
But then he goes on to say, and ports and storms are good, right? They're good. I mean, in a storm, you need a place to put your boats in the storm, but you don't want your Navy in the port, right? I mean, you want your Navy out as warships patrolling and fighting, and this, and so that's what's interesting, right? He's not sitting there, in some of his ilk, these Reconstructionist Christians like him are not in this sort of, hey, the sort of Benedict option, just get buy your Birkenstocks and get out there and be a right wing chicken farmer or something. No. He's like, storm the gates, and so that, I don't know. So that's, but he would see himself. I mean, I feel like Wilson would embrace what Jensen's saying here. He just would say,
"Oh, right. Well, that it isn't that even he exists." I mean, you think about this. We can go back even the founders of the first things. You look at different people chose different ways to go from that period of time. But I think Wilson's. We should do a little survey. What level of Dante's Hell will Wilson's church ultimately be in?
Would you put him on your great Americans list with Joey Scarborough?
Joe Scarborough, Aaron Burr, P.T. Beauregard, all those guys. Yeah, he's up there. Yeah, that's very good. That's something to think about. So, but again, it's gosh. Well, I was going to say, I hope there are a few seminaries left that will be able to be studying Jensen in the next century, because
but, I mean, this is
he's worth it. Yeah,
I mean, that is interesting. First off, how many seminaries could you undertake a rigorous study of Jensen? Right? I remember Rusty Reno, another great American.
You're on a roll today, man.
No, I think Rusty said this to me personally years ago. He said that he would teach in his senior theology seminar at Crichton, I guess this was in Nebraska. He said he would teach his senior theology seminar by having students read Jensen systematics. He said, because if you just read and went through the footnotes carefully, it gave you sort of a survey of the tradition. I think about, could you get that anywhere today, right now? I don't know. My guess is there's not a lot of that going on. And isn't that, in some sense, the first line of defense, right, against nihilism, right? Is if the person who tells the best story wins. We need storytellers. I love what does Jensen say there? That's such a great. Perhaps a preacher or poet can be elected president,
right?
Or something else will break the continuities, right? How do you break the continuities? How do you break the continuities? And I think the direction of the way the church is forming folks in general doesn't seem to be in a way that would break the continuities, and that's probably what we need more of.
Yeah, maybe what we need to do is seal our libraries and say, open when another century is ready to read again. I hope there are Boethists, our own, Boethists out there saving something. Because I'm with you. I mean, I just had I was at a meeting, and I won't get into the details per se, but one of the things we're talking about, again, finding ways to ordain people who haven't gone to seminary. And I said, and one person said, well, what about the people who went to seminary, feel jealous or be angry that we're letting people who didn't go to seminary be ordained? I go, the problem isn't the how, but we have to remember the why. Why did our tradition say an educated clergy was important? How you do it isn't so important anymore because, frankly, most seminaries have so watered down their curriculum that reading Jensen and reading Dante would be a better theological education. But how do we recapture the why? Because I think you're right. Because it's not accidental. Again, I think what happened in terms of the failure to have a free exchange of ideas at some of our elite schools has been problematic. You and I've talked about that before. Matter of fact, we even did a whole podcast of the one who shall not be mentioned of blessed memory.
Shall not be named. Yeah.
Should not be named, being censored.
That was our most listened to episode.
Most listened to, and so we and I have been critical of that for years. The question is, in the name of that, they are attacking. They're attacking universities, free speech. And again, what's interesting to me is how quickly these places are rolling over. I mean, if politically correctness or whatever you want to call it, if it was so important, if it was so right, if it was worth, having all these rules about, then why did you give up on it so quickly? So what's the price of that? What was the price of your ideology? $400 million?
30 pieces of silver.
Yeah. Or that you built your elite law practice on government contracts, and now suddenly you've lost your nerve. We live in an age of small humans. We live in the very age of shadow people,
of little Marcos.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? We've got, the good news is we have a faith it's full of big hope. And
yeah, we just need some Christians that have spines and have a mind, for God's sake. All right, stop being so stupid.
I'm surprised no one ever wrote a folk song with that title.
Yeah, well, I'm working on it. All right, peace.
Well, everybody, thank you, everybody. It's been great being with you.
And guess what, Scott?
Of course, yeah.
The beat goes on.
The beat goes on.